Welcome back to another episode of Creating Your Life on Money and Wealth. This is episode 34, Credit and Debt. Okay, we're going to talk about credit and debt. And one of the first things to realize about credit and debt is a real simple thing. They're essentially the same thing. When you have credit, people are essentially saying to you that you have an opportunity to go into debt. And as you know, as we've been saying, debt is slavery. So what does that mean? Think about credit cards. Think about somebody who's off to the side watching you and somebody else trade. You buy something that other person has. So somebody is selling, let's say, a book. They're selling a book to you for $5 and you pay them $5. Now, there are people in this world that look at a transaction like that, and one of the first things they do is say, how can I make money off that transaction? In other words, there's an exchange between two people. How can I insert myself in there somehow? This is what they do. They do it very simply. Now, remember, in keeping this all together, that there's no such thing as a free lunch. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch, is how it's typically said, Konstoffel. That being the case, what's the point of credit? See, somebody comes along and let's just say, hey, my name is Mark Alexander. I have the Mark Alexander credit card and I want to give it to you. And this credit card will allow you to buy things now, because I think that you have good credit. I think that you'll be willing to pay back any debt that you create. The point of good credit is to allow you to buy something before you have the money to have it. In other words, it caters to an impulse that you have to get something now, even though you haven't earned the money yet to acquire it. So the point of it is to keep you in debt somehow. Why? I mean, if I just give you a credit card and you buy the book first and then pay off the credit card, maybe I make a little interest off of that, or I can get a transaction fee or something. But that's not what I really want. Here, think about it this way. Think about somebody who's a creditor. Okay, and think about a creditor who has 100,000 people using their credit cards. Ideally, they have everybody who reaches their credit limit, their debt ceiling, and they're making only the interest payments. In other words, if I can get you to increase the amount of debt you have on your credit card, but I get you to pay just a small monthly amount, okay? Then what happens is there's a way there I can keep you in a perpetual state of debt. You're not really paying off what you owe me. You're just paying off the interest that I'm charging. And if you have credit cards, you know that interest rates can be well over 20%, which historically, some hundreds of years ago, anything like 3% or over, people got hanged for it. So what happens? If I can get 100,000 people to be in a perpetual state of debt, and I have this steady income rolling in, I don't really have to do anything but to watch the money come in. And what happens? What happens if you reach your credit limit? And, what am I going to do? I can increase that limit. As long as you're paying off the monthly thing, you're going to have great credit. In fact, here's one of the secrets. Some people like me, I'll pay off the entire amount of my credit card every month. It's good to have a credit card in a modern world. It makes it easier to have transactions. But I pay off the entire balance. And because of that, my credit rating is slightly lower than somebody who would have the same card with the same debt, paying just the monthly fee regularly. That person has a better credit rating. Why? Because they're the ones who are enslaved to the system, and it allows me as a creditor to just rake it in. So the point is for me to get you hooked. Somehow I have to get you hooked into wanting something now, and rather than waiting for it, and just pay off this debt. And as you pay off some of the principal, there's a difference between what you're paying and the credit limit, and then you'll use it again and keep that up. So if you're in a position as you listen to this where you've pretty much maxed out a credit card and you're only making minimum payments, you're doing exactly what your creditors want you to do. They want you to be in this state of perpetual debt. Now imagine how they think about that. I want to get more and more people into this. I want to increase the amount. So I'm going to keep looking for people. I'm going to send credit cards to college students and say, hey, your credit rating, we're going to test you out. Get something now. This is a good thing. And if something happens and you begin reducing your principal, I'm going to raise your credit limit. Wow, you're doing that. I want you to get into debt more, so I'll do something big. That's why credit companies and creditors are less interested in you making, paying off the debt. They're really interested in you having debt and paying that interest and principal. Now think back to high school or junior high school. And remember how they taught you in school to save money and buy only when you have enough, when you've saved enough money. And remember when they talked about ideas like being frugal or being thrifty. Do you remember that? No, you don't. Why? Because they probably didn't teach you that. Instead, what they taught you about is simple things like opening a checking account, building credit, how important it is to pay on time, how to at least pay the minimum payment, and how to protect your credit rating. They didn't teach you things like being frugal, which means being careful about spending money, or not using things thoughtlessly so you don't have to spend needlessly. They didn't teach you about being thrifty, which is similar to being frugal, but it's about being careful with your money management, saving for a rainy day, avoiding debt. This is the point, to get you in debt. That's what credit is about. Now, in a modern society as we have today, you really have to have a good credit rating to be able to do some things. But how you pay off, the way you get into debt and pay it off is different. And one of the habits of freedom to cultivate in your life, it's a very simple one. Buy things as you can afford them. Build up the money first, then buy them. It's amazing how much money you will save. If you buy a home, and look at the finance charges and the way banks work, a 30-year loan, for example, it's amazing when you notice on your initial payments how almost your entire payment is going to the interest, and your principal is only going down by a few dollars at a time. So initially, they're just raking in the bucks. The only way to buy a home thoughtfully and save a lot of money is to put a good amount on the principal. Now, they're going to tell you, hey, there is this tax write-off and this and that. But here's the thing. Slavery comes in the form of monthly payments. The fact that you have so much of an income going out every month that you have to pay off things, that's the extent to which you have to work. Imagine being in a position where you didn't have to work, or that you had a cushion. So if your job changed or if you were out of work, you could go months or even years being okay because you don't have this monthly outgo apart from basic living expenses. So credit can get you into trouble. Credit can get you into a slave mentality. And then there are people on the outside, they don't have debts. They have assets. They have you. You are continually putting money into their pocket. So the whole point of credit is to keep you in debt. And your job, starting now, if you haven't started already, is to begin the process, paying more than the minimum payment. Look at the kind of loans you're taking out. Pay more than what they're saying so that you can reduce that debt faster and get to a point where you're just making monthly payments on the debts you're creating within that month. That's what freedom is ultimately about. On the next episode, we're going to talk about basic investments, part 1. In the meantime, check out markandrealexander.com and my book, Money and Wealth, What You Should Have Learned as a Teen.